Week 4, so much to get to, and we appreciate you being here. We have got some huge matchups. Let's get right to them. I'm going to leave the call-in line in the chat. We don't have much time. We've got till 11 a.m. Eastern time. We typically take it past that if you so choose. But we've got the Sooner Show. We're talking Oklahoma, Tennessee live over on the OU channel with Jason Ray at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So let's get right to it. I should have had this link in the chat already. And we're just going to go through week 4. All right, so give me a call, leave those comments and questions, and I will get to the comments and questions. I will also get to the calls, of course. Week 4, here we go. Keep in mind the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos, including this one. Here's the deal. When you shop with the Amazon link, it recognizes you and your account, and it is exactly no different than you using your own link or the generic Amazon link to go into Amazon. It immediately recognizes you, your account, your history, everything you need, saves your credit card information, everything that you've got on your Amazon account instantaneously like magic. Use our link, and the only difference has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with us, is that you, out of your generosity, are spending nothing, not a penny. However, you are kicking a few bucks back to the Voice of College Football from Amazon. So you take away from their trillions and you give to our pennies here at the Voice of College Football. So we would appreciate that you would financially support us in this way that does not take away a penny from you. How about that? Amazing. The schedule here at the Voice of College Football, as I mentioned, we've got the Oklahoma show coming up directly following this one. Oklahoma with a huge matchup against Tennessee. And then we've got post-game on the Nebraska channel following their big matchup with Illinois tonight. And then I will be here live taking your calls after football tonight as well. Let's get to week 4. And of course, it starts with Nebraska and Illinois. We did a ton on this game yesterday. Check out yesterday's show. Bill Bender of Sporting News stopped by, as well as Sonny Verma from Locked On and Andy Ketterman from Corn Nation. So we talked Nebraska, Illinois, all over the place, all angles, all sorts of Nebraska, Illinois preview talk on Thursday's show. So check it out. Tonight, following, of course, last night's results, I did not see one play of this game. I saw first or second quarter score and thought, woo, App State is not App State this year, are they? They got drubbed by Clemson. So this somewhat eliminates the talk about Clemson really putting down a statement in week 2 against App State, because Clemson had 56 on the board at halftime and just demolished App State. Well, South Alabama did something similar, 48-14. So the App State of your older brother is certainly gone, at least for one season. App State taking a season off, I guess, because this has been one of the most consistent winners in college football over the last 10 or 15 years. Since joining FBS play, certainly they have not had a losing season. They're on their way to one right now. They lost by 34 points to South Alabama, who's on quite the scoring run. 87 last week and 48 this week. I'm guessing that South Alabama leads the nation in points per game. So not much to talk about there other than Joey Aguilar at 266 yards passing, and South Alabama's off to a hot start. And again, App State, they are one of the G5 stories of the year as being on decline. All right, Tonight, we've got Stanford, we've got Syracuse. It is Stanford's entry into the ACC. They're sporting some new helmets, I understand, tonight. I saw the pictures of the new Stanford helmets wearing the cardinal red. Going to Syracuse to take on the Orange. This is the first time these two teams have met, and they're meeting in conference play. Kyle McCord leading the Syracuse offense, Arade Gadsden at wide receiver. Syracuse has already notched a big win for them in conference against Georgia Tech. They could go to 2-0, and they're probably a fairly substantial favorite to do so. 8.5 points seems fair. Stanford did play with TCU at home in week 1. Good game, close game. TCU pulled it out 34-27. So Stanford can show themselves capable. So they stayed with a team that's roughly the same as Syracuse. Syracuse, TCU. Stanford at home in that TCU game. Again, had a lead. Game went back and forth. And they lost in the last couple of minutes by a touchdown. They were about an 8 to 10 point underdog in that game. There's the game that we all want to see tonight. My apologies to Stanford and Syracuse fans, also San Jose State and Washington State, but Nebraska and Illinois. This is one of those, okay, both of these teams might be a little bit better, especially Illinois, a little bit better than we anticipated. Okay, so this is the next measuring stick, the next data point to add to the previous legitimate data point. For Illinois, that was a pretty substantial legitimate data point at the time against Kansas. Kansas since has lost to UNLV by a field goal. So again, we go from layer to layer to layer to layer. Well, we thought this game was significant. We thought this opponent was legit. We thought them to be a top 15 to 20 team in Kansas's case before the season. A lot of people had them in the top 25. I did not, but certainly getting off to a better start than they have. And so then, again, data point, because we can always unravel well, you beat them, but are they really that good? No, they lost to you. Well, of course they lost to you. That's why we're talking about your win. But then in Kansas' case, they went out and lost to UNLV, who also defeated Houston, who took Oklahoma to the wire. That's why the resume is so important, not the degree by degree measurement, the transitive property, not so much. We can do all sorts of things with the transitive property. I proved that to somebody a few years ago. This was in 2021, the year that Ohio State lost to Oregon. By the transitive property, Ohio State would have lost to Northern Arizona that year. But Ohio State also won the Rose Bowl. Which is it? Well, I think Ohio State winning the Rose Bowl was more in line with their capabilities. So again, these teams are building a resume, and we are gaining more and more information and intel by the week. Of course, different matchups mean different things. That's why you can't compare just maybe one score. It means something. It means something. Like if Illinois was going to play UNLV, they both beat Kansas. They both beat Kansas in close games. Would Illinois and UNLV be a close game? Probably should be, because that's an indicator. But let's not take it too far. Resumes. So this is another resume building block for both Nebraska and Illinois. And I expect this to be a heck of a game. If there is potential for a blowout, the Nebraska side, because they do have slightly better talent, because they do have Dylan Raiola playing as well as he is early, plus just his ceiling is through the roof, which I guess is an oxymoron. And then, of course, you've got the home crowd, and this crowd is going to be fired up. I know that they were lit for the Colorado game, but now they've got the Colorado game under their belts as a decisive, dominating win. And now each week with each win, regardless of how insignificant. But as a Big Ten game starting now, going into the Big Ten season, this crowd in Lincoln is going to be electric tonight. The nation will be watching. It's on Fox. I love what Fox did with the Friday schedule. Mostly Big Ten, a few from the Big 12, including last week. Arizona, Kansas State did not turn out to be a good game, but good game on paper. Fox is giving us good matchups, although they did not anticipate that this would be as good a matchup as it is. These teams have funny little numbers next to their names. We didn't anticipate that. Nebraska, Illinois, again, a deeper dive on Thursday's show. Just check it out. No reason to repeat all that. Bill Bender, the Sporting News, and also Sonny Verma, Locked On Illini, and the appearance we had from Andy Ketterman from Corn Nation on Thursday. I'm going to enjoy watching this game. I'm going to be able to get a half hour of Syracuse Stanford in, and then I'll just have the two screens and we'll be all set. And then we will see you late night after the games are over. Not all the games, because we're not going to stick around till 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning for Washington State, San Jose State. And an interesting angle to this Washington State team this year is that they are a heavy favorite. This has to be 3 touchdowns. Okay, 12-point favorite against San Jose State at home, coming off a win against Washington. So Washington State, who I have ranked in the top 5, and people just went crazy. Mark, Washington State in the top 5. You're an idiot. Okay. I do not believe that Washington State's one of the 5 best teams in the country, but beat Texas Tech by 3 touchdowns. They beat Washington. They are one of the very few teams in college football that have 2 substantial wins already. So their resume is top 5 in the country right now. Even if they go undefeated. So this is another thing about the top 25 that actually makes sense. Even if Washington State goes undefeated, are they going to finish number 5 in my rankings? No. And then people will say, Mark, they were 3-0. They were number 5. How in the world do they go 12-0 and they don't finish in the top 5? Because their schedule is going to weight them down week by week by week by week, as opposed to everybody else's schedules elevating in conference play. So Washington State, the interesting point there, of which I may look into. We talked about this a couple times here in the last few weeks as they won these games, especially after they beat Washington, that if they go 12-0, the committee's going to have to look at Washington State. And is their resume going to be playoff worthy? I don't think so, but I don't want to see another undefeated team, especially that plays in the power conference structure, which they do technically. They're an independent of sorts. They're in the Pac-12 conference. They are officially in the Pac-12 conference. If you look up the Pac-12 conference standings, it will show you Washington State and Oregon State, but they do not have a legitimate conference on the field. They do legally have a legitimate conference and look like they're coming back to us. So it is a Power 5 technically and will be on the field going forward starting in, I don't know what year. But it's an interesting case with Washington State. I want to see them go undefeated, not because I like Wazoo, not because I really care from a football standpoint, not that I'm rooting for Washington State. Jake Dickert appeared on our show a couple of years ago. Seems like a great guy, but not rooting for Washington State, except I want to see chaos. I want to see decisions that have to be made that are difficult decisions. Washington State goes 12-0. Do I think it will happen? No. The probability is that they will get tripped up by somebody. On Saturday, Marshall, the best team Ohio State has faced to date, which is pretty sad. They played a decent first half against Virginia Tech last week. We broke that game down on the Ohio State Live show this week. Check it out. Buckeyes a 40-point favorite. And really everything going right along on the Ohio State beat. No issues, injuries, nothing, chugging along, completely annihilated Western Michigan. Now they get the bye week going to Marshall. I would think that they would have liked the bye week going into either Iowa or Oregon. So we are, let's see, today's the 21st. Oh, it's Michigan State. Michigan State, keep forgetting about that game. So Ohio State opens the Big Ten next week against Michigan State, who has a pretty big non-conference game themselves. So the Fox Big Noon game is Ohio State hosting Marshall. I've got to think that they're going to have Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson do another game. They're probably doing the 3:30 game, which I guess would be, we will get to it. Maybe it's Utah, Oklahoma State. That's what I would guess, that even though this is the big noon game and that's typically Gus and Joel, that they would assign them to a better game. That's my guess. Clemson, NC State, that will be the second game on my television. I guess I'll go with those two. I'll check out the Buckeyes early. Then if that turns the way that it should. For some reason, I've got an interest because things are so dire with Mississippi State and Florida. Mississippi State, simply from a program building standpoint, there should be no concerns at this point about Jeff Lebby. But, man, this roster and the talent, and maybe there is an issue with Jeff Lebby long term, but I'm not going to just run to a conclusion because they lost by 24 points to a MAC team. Maybe the best MAC team, Toledo, but still, SEC at home losing to Toledo. Toledo has now notched 2 SEC wins in about 5 years. They did this to Arkansas. Florida, check out the video we posted with David Waters. Great conversation, Gators breakdown. They do it as well as anyone with David at the helm. So great content on Florida. Billy Napier, what do they do? When are they going to do it? Who's next? What's this program look like outside of Billy Napier? Are there other issues to be considered? But Florida's going to field a football team, and actually, despite all this mess, they're a 6-point favorite. That shows you how bad Mississippi State is. The Gators, a 6.5-point favorite at Mississippi State. I don't know what to pick in this game, but I will be. Will I predict this game? I don't know. Non-top 25 game. So my pledge to you. So if you've got the YouTube Premium membership or the Patreon Premium membership, you get all my picks, Matt Zemek's picks, Steve Dace picks. So between the three of us, you get over 50 predictions each week, money line and against the spread. Then you get Steve Merrill's under the radar selection. So I pick all the top 25 games. And then I look outside the top 25 and any games that are meaningful. Based on my estimation, I pick those games as well. So don't know if I'm going to get to Florida and Mississippi State. Yikes. Charlotte and Indiana, the Hoosiers should get to 4-0 under Kurt Cignetti, who is showing us that he can coach. Now, is Indiana going to continue this run? No. They're not that good, but Indiana UCLA was one of those games, much like Nebraska Illinois, but just at a lower level. Okay, here's these two teams. We got a field goal game according to Vegas. Who's going to emerge? Well, Indiana separated themselves significantly. You go on the road all the way to the West Coast and win by, well, the game wasn't close. It was never in doubt once Indiana went up by 3 touchdowns. So this is a not bottom of the rung Big Ten team. They are significantly improved. Now they play Charlotte. Looking forward to getting back into Big Ten play next week. Then some significant games, although North Carolina's got to look out for James Madison. Houston, Cincinnati, probably with the dubious distinction of the losers, the worst team in the Big 12. And that looks like an American Conference game to me, because that's what it was 2 years ago. Kansas at West Virginia. The Mountaineers have lost 2 games. They're already 1-2, and West Virginia fans, from what I've seen, are mad. I've seen Neil Brown fired trending on social media. That's not the West Virginia administration. So let's separate those things. It has nothing to do with what their decision is going to be, but this guy just led them to a 9-4 season. Keep in mind, 2 losses, both out of conference. This is the first game in conference for West Virginia. It's a clean slate. 0-0. Taking on Kansas. Kansas with 2 losses already. 2 teams with 2 losses outside the conference. Would love to see one of them go on a run and win the conference championship with 2 losses outside the conference. Again, just to see a strange team with a strange record earn the bye out of the Big 12. In terms of a football game, I got to think that West Virginia is a just slight, maybe not, maybe Kansas is a slight road favorite, maybe 2. I think we're within 2 on this one. There we go. West Virginia, a 2-point favorite. That was my first inclination on that game. Tulane's a good football team despite losing 2 games to Kansas State and Oklahoma. They were in both games in the fourth quarter. If you've got ESPN Plus, and I'm guessing nobody does that I'm speaking to, Virginia and Coastal Carolina, maybe you do. ESPN Plus, I guess they provide some good stuff. And if you've got a team that plays a lot of off the board, under the radar kind of games, your alma mater, then it's a good service to have. It's bringing back memories, actually, because we would have to operate all those ESPN Plus games. Virginia, Coastal Carolina, that could be a good game. I bet Virginia is probably a 5 or 6 point favorite, 3.5. Kent State lost by 71 last week. Where is Vegas going to put this line against Penn State? Penn State not apt to go the direction of Tennessee and just completely annihilate a team. 49 is the spread. And there we go. USC and Michigan. Of course, we have broken this game down all over the place. I am refraining from saying the term ad nauseum. USC and Michigan. Is Michigan as mediocre and lousy on offense and at the quarterback position as we have been led to believe based on their performance? Based on their performance through 3 games. They did run it against Arkansas State with Khalil Mullings, who has impressed a lot of people. I've got to see him against a good defense, but I got to say that I was always impressed with Khalil Mullings from the time that he got any kind of reps, but I didn't expect him or project him or even see him as any kind of special back. A lot of people are seeing him as being an upper echelon back. I got to watch more, and I will be locked in on this game. Absolutely. USC and Michigan. I get why people are buying into USC, just walking in there and just tearing up Michigan and walking out with a win easily. I get it. We saw Texas. USC does not have that offensive line. Miller Moss has not faced a road crowd like Quinn Ewers. We can compare the skill sets. They probably are comparable. They're the same style quarterbacks. But Quinn Ewers has played in college football playoff games and Big 12 championship games and road games and Oklahoma rivalry games. And Miller Moss has played a really good spotlight game, highlighted game against LSU, neutral site, and of course, a bowl game. He has not gone to the big house. And that crowd, if it's doing its job, the Michigan faithful will be able to recognize, okay, this is the season. This is the season. Not mathematically, it's not the season. If they lose this game, they only have one loss in the Big Ten. They can still rally and win the Big Ten or still get to a college football playoff, technically. But by all reasonable conclusions, this is the game. This is the game to take a stand, to reverse all the downward momentum, reverse perception that we are not the same team, the same program, because our coach left and our NFL players, many left. Michigan is still loaded with NFL players. That's not the problem. Do they have a quarterback? Well, they at least have a runner at quarterback now. They at least have somebody who can threaten a defense in one way. He may give it away. He may give it away because he can't throw and they're going to make him throw and he's going to have to throw because of situations and he's going to give it away. Or Michigan's going to give it away because they're going to refuse to let him throw and they're going to be one-dimensional and they're going to be down 24-3 in the first half. But that crowd should be at fever pitch. There are crowds that are at fever pitch for one of two basic reasons that I can think of. One would be, this is a huge game and we love our team and they're amazing and this is enormous. Oregon in a couple weeks against Ohio State, they're going to be at fever pitch because we are Oregon. We are aiming at a championship. We have just joined this new league. This is the top dog in that league. They're coming to our place. They're ranked number 1, number 2, number 3 in the country, whatever it is. All of that. This has been dubbed the game of the year in the Big Ten. We're at a fever pitch. And as long as Oregon does not trip up before Ohio State or Ohio State before Oregon, undefeated matchup, that place is going to be just rocking. The other circumstance in which you see a home crowd just at a fever pitch is we are a proud program. We have history, tradition. We consider ourselves the best, and we are down. We need to lift our team either to get them to where they perform at the level that we expect, or this is not a very good football team, but we want to raise them beyond their limitations on this day, and we're going to will them to a win. We are going to be the 12th man on the field, and we are going to push them to victory. And we are sensing that we're losing this season, so we've got to push through, and we got to will a win. That's what I think we'll see at the Big House. All right. Appreciate the contribution coming in there from our guy, Drufus. Drufus, if Michigan drops to USC 8-4, is their ceiling? So technically, no, of course. Their ceiling is still 10-2 because I can cite teams in the past that have faced this kind of adversity and shown themselves not to be up to a challenge of competing for a championship, but lost a couple games early, bounced back, and completed some type of run. USC in 2016, they were 1-3 after losing to Utah. Even after they replaced the quarterback position, Sam Darnold took over, and USC was 1-3. They didn't lose another game. They won the Rose Bowl. They beat a lot of teams, or a few teams, that would have been projected to beat them when they were off to that 1-3, 0-2, 1-3 start. But yes, Drufus, you're on it. By all reasonable measurements, if Michigan can't beat USC, regardless of the score, especially if they lose in a similar fashion to what they lost to against Texas, and then they've got Oregon and Ohio State. So there's your ceiling. They're not going to beat one of the three best teams in the country, or two of the three or four best teams in the country. And that doesn't even count more difficult assignments than we thought against Illinois comes to mind, Michigan State. Those are two mid to lower level teams in the Big Ten, or so we thought, that are better than we thought that Michigan's going to have to deal with. So, yeah, I would generally agree with that comment, although it's not mathematically the case. Other comments and questions, leave those in the chat. We've got the call-in line available to you as well. Otherwise, I'm going to run through the schedule, and we're going to go off to our Oklahoma show at the top of the hour against Tennessee, of course. So OU and Tennessee. So I may just breeze through that one, even though that might be the biggest game of the day, depending on your perspective. There is no biggest game of the day. It all depends on who's your team, who's your conference. USC, Michigan, Utah, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Tennessee. I think all of those carry similar weight in each conference. Although, if you believe, as I do, Ohio State and Oregon are the class of the Big Ten, and Penn State might be third, USC might be third, USC might be first when it's all said and done. But right now, the preseason perception should pretty much hold Ohio State, Oregon. And if it's Alabama, Georgia, of course, that's the game of the year in the SEC, not Oklahoma and Tennessee. And that's what would make this week's Big 12 headliner, Utah, Oklahoma State, the most important game. That is the most important game of the week. Where is that game? I believe they play at 3:30. No, maybe not. Play at 4. There it is. Yeah. That will be the Gus Johnson, Joel Klatt game, I'm almost certain. And I bet Oklahoma State's a slight, very slight favorite, 2.5. There you go. Because they're at home. Basically, Vegas is telling us this is a toss-up, or maybe Utah is a tick better, but basically a toss-up. And since the game's at Boone Pickens Stadium, that we give the nod to the Cowboys. I went into this season thinking that Utah was a better football team. I'm going to have to check on the status of Cam Rising and really look at these two teams before I make a pick. I was not impressed with Oklahoma State against Arkansas, that's for sure. Utah pretty much was sleepwalking through a game against Baylor. They won by 11. And Utah they drubbed Utah Tech, or whomever they played the first week. It was somebody like that. Then it was Utah State last week. Pretty much just a semi-comfortable win by 17, but nothing dominating. So, yeah, neither one of these teams have played up to expectations. Just a tick under. Not that they've been horrible by any stretch. They're both 3-0, but slightly less than expectations. This is the most important game of the week. It is in the Big 12. Why? Because those other teams can make the playoff. Those other teams can lose those games and make the playoff. They're damaging losses. If USC loses, Michigan, Tennessee, Oklahoma, those are damaging losses. Absolutely. Let's not mistake this for the NFL. That it is still difficult to make the playoff. But in the Big 12, you may have to be the champion. And so this is the first enormous step a team is going to take toward getting to the Big 12 championship game. Utah and Oklahoma State, although probably more so for Oklahoma State, who I believe plays a much more difficult schedule than Utah. Utah's the Big 12. I don't know if they were thinking, okay, we want to be good to Utah because we think they're the best team. And if they blow it in the Big 12 championship game, or they blow it before that and don't get to the Big 12 championship game, we want to have that option that they could be an at-large selection. I don't know if that crossed their minds, but Utah's remaining schedule: Arizona, Arizona State, TCU, Houston, BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, UCF. And this is what we mean when we say there's a big separation between these conferences. That's a lousy schedule. Oklahoma State, after this Utah game, plays at Kansas State, West Virginia, at BYU, Baylor, Arizona State, TCU, Texas Tech, Colorado. Not that much tougher, except Kansas State on the road. That's the one that stands out. The rest of these teams, my goodness, the entire Big 12. I still think that Utah and Kansas State are the class of the league. I picked them to play in the championship game. And that Oklahoma State and Iowa State are pretty good. And then the rest of it's just a muddled mess. Utah, Kansas State, good teams. They're not Georgia. They're not Ohio State. They're not that. Good teams. Utah and Kansas State are two of the top 20 teams in the country. Oklahoma State and Iowa State, maybe slightly less than that. And they will certainly have their opportunity to prove that they're better than that. And then I'm looking at the rest of these teams, and I still have to believe that Houston and Cincinnati are bad teams. And maybe Colorado is. Arizona State's been playing well, so I'm going to take them out of the bottom tier. And then the rest of it's just a complete toss-up. Just a mess. Just a lot of just meh football teams. Just average football teams. Just when I say average, I mean average. I mean out of the 135 teams in the FBS, I'll give them a slight tick up because they play in the Power 5, and not just because of that formality, but they are a little bit better than the entire average of college football. But if you're looking at a Power 5 average, most of the Big 12 is below that average. Like if the average team in the Power 5 is, of course, at 35 because you've got 70 teams, Arizona, West Virginia, TCU, Kansas, UCF, Texas Tech, Baylor, Colorado, BYU, those teams are below 35. So they are below average teams in the Power 5. That's what the Big 12 is. I ranked the Big 12 as the worst conference, not by much. Not by much. Look at the conference rankings. We had the Big 12 last, and I said that it was close enough between the ACC and the Big 12 that the two wins that Pitt had against the Big 12, that turned it. So if Cincinnati wouldn't have blown their game and West Virginia would not have blown their game against Pitt, then we would have flipped them. But that's how close it is. So there aren't that many more non-conference games to rank these conferences. So the Big 12, until further notice, is probably the worst conference. I don't know. The ACC is pretty bad too. Who's the worst conference, everyone? What do we think? Christopher is saying, well, Conundrum is saying that Indiana is better than all those Big 12 teams. And Christopher is saying that Oklahoma and Texas left did not help. Now, that's the understatement of the year, that it didn't help. That didn't help. That gutted the league from an elite standpoint, from the potential of being elite. Oklahoma's not elite right now, of course. Probably not. But that gutted the league. It's a fun league, but it's fun because everybody's so average that when they play each other, they make for great games. The best games of every week in college football are not necessarily between the best teams. They're usually between UCF and TCU last week. Those teams they're not very good. They're okay. They have talented players in spots. I really like KJ Jefferson and RJ Harvey. Same thing on the TCU side. I could name guys that are quality players. Will play in the NFL, but overall, they're the 40th best teams in the country. So it makes for a great game. 35-34 makes for great games in the Big 12. Joey, you're wrong. Yes. Please don't tell me I'm wrong when you are wrong. Like I said, it's a close competition between the ACC and the Big 12. The Big 12 is not. The Big 12 is not. I didn't say that the Big 12 was the worst conference for sure. If you were listening to me, I was saying that it's close between the ACC and the Big 12. It is close between the ACC and the Big 12. And yes, there are Syracuse and Wake Forest level teams in the Big 12. They are called Cincinnati and Houston and others. Yes, there are those teams. Texas Tech can't get out of their own way. They can't beat the likes of whoever they beat 52-51 a couple of weeks ago, Abilene Christian. So, yeah, I come from a neutral standpoint, Joey. I know you're a Big 12 guy, so you're obviously extremely, extremely biased. Again, I'm not saying that the Big 12 is the worst conference. I'm saying that it's probably the worst conference. I don't know that for sure. Nobody knows anything for sure. These conferences haven't played enough games against each other. You know, what has been substantial? Unfortunately, Utah doesn't play anybody outside the conference. Kansas State doesn't play anybody outside the conference. They beat Tulane by a touchdown. Okay? Tulane's a decent team, but the team that may end up winning the Big 12 beat Tulane by a touchdown and trailed most of the game. We've got Oklahoma State, who may win the Big 12 championship. Right now, they're a favorite against the team that's considered to be the best team in the Big 12. And Oklahoma State gave up 650 yards to Arkansas, who then turned around and beat UAB by 10 points. Arkansas is not that good a football team. They're one of the worst teams in the SEC, and Oklahoma State barely beat them at home in overtime. So West Virginia's lost its 2 out-of-conference games. Cincinnati's lost to Pitt. Houston got drubbed by a group of 5 team by 3 touchdowns. Kansas lost against Illinois. The best win that the conference has by far is Iowa State beat Iowa. But did they dominate Iowa? Did they win decisively? No. I'd still say that Iowa's a better team, but Iowa State, to its credit, won the game on a 54-yard field goal at the gun. That's the only decent win this conference has posted. Right? Right. Any other, if I'm missing one, We're not going to count the Stanford win as being anything exceptional. Any other good wins for the Big 12? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. No, they've got one, and they got a half one against Tulane. That's all I'm seeing. Am I missing something? Still, I'm thinking through the conference. Anybody else? The ACC could have one extremely good team. It still remains to be seen, but Miami could be way better than anybody in the Big 12. They might be. They might be. And we'll see about Clemson. We'll see about NC State. We'll see about all sorts of other teams. Yeah, I'm just saying that both conferences are pretty bad. All right. All right. All right. So Joey says that Miami is a very good team, but he thinks Utah's better. Well, that is a meaningless statement. So that doesn't mean anything just because you think that Utah's better. I'm going to what the results are telling us at this point. All right, let's get back to the breakdown here. So again, I do believe that Utah and Oklahoma State is the most important game of the week. If you are thinking about playoff, if you're thinking about a national championship, then it's not, because those teams will not be playing for a national championship. They will be in the playoff. Somebody's going to be in the playoff out of the Big 12. And I really actually hope that the Big 12 gets 2 teams. I hope the ACC gets 2 teams. Why? I don't know. They may not even deserve it. They may not have earned it. But I would like to see the Big 10 and the SEC get knocked down a little bit and have a slot taken away. Part of me does. Part of me rooting for the underdog, rooting for the downtrodden, would like to see a second team from the Big 12 and the ACC. But most likely, there are going to be too many good teams out of the SEC and the Big 10. Vanderbilt, can they put up a fight against Mizzou? Mizzou beat Boston College last week. Not a great win. Decent win. Boston College is capable. TCU, SMU. There's another Big 12 out of conference game right there against SMU. SMU has won more than their share against TCU in recent years. TCU won the game last year. That's not really an opportunity for the Big 12 to show much there, unfortunately. If they win at TCU, that's an okay win. Again, this all has to play out, of course, because then we're going to think, okay, what is SMU going to do in the ACC? We have yet to see that. I can't wait to see these new teams in the ACC. We saw Cal go to Auburn and win by a touchdown. Now they're coming back across the country. Poor Cal and Stanford. They're going to have to continually just make these cross-country flights. And so Cal made this flight 2 weeks ago to come out to Auburn, kick their rear ends, go back to California, play a game, back out to the East Coast, the quote-unquote East Coast, and play Florida State. And that should be a heck of a game, actually. If you're looking for a close game, I can't really vouch for the quality of play. Miami's playing South Florida. They're a 17-point favorite. South Florida, of course, for a second consecutive year, gave Alabama a scare. And in the case of South Florida and Miami, check out the Miami show this week. Where's that? On the Miami channel here at the Voice of College Football. We had our writer stop by to talk about South Florida football, and we got a nice rundown and preview on this game. But that Miami show, that should be on your calendar every week, Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern. Northwestern and Washington, okay? Interesting Big Ten game there, of course. There's the Cal-Florida State game, where Cal could move to 4-0, and Florida State could be 0-4. Florida State could be 0-4. we produced a video, about a week before the season started to say, look at the AP top 10. One of these teams will not finish ranked, at least one. And there you go. It's already been Florida State. They've already taken care of that business. Tennessee, Oklahoma. Again, we talked about this one yesterday, and we're going to talk about it for the next hour. So I'm not going to sit here and go through Tennessee, Oklahoma. Follow us to the Oklahoma Show next. And we will take the deep dive on the Sooners and the Vols. Arch Manning starts this week against Louisiana Monroe. We've got an Ole Miss show here at the Voice of College Football. We're 2 weeks in. Please check it out. It will eventually move to the Ole Miss channel, but you can check it out here on the main channel. You've got myself and Leanne Herring, and we talk Ole Miss football. Please check it out. We were live on Thursday. We'll be back next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Michigan State and Boston College. Now, there's a couple what appeared to be dead in the water teams to open the season. And there they are, both looking stronger than expected. Boston College goes to Florida State, and I know it's Florida State, but it's still Florida State talent. It's still a top 15 roster in the country. And Boston College rolled there, and then they backed it up with a nice effort at Mizzou. So Boston College showing some life under Bill O'Brien. Nobody that knows anything about football has ever accused Bill O'Brien of not knowing what he's doing. Now, there may be some issues in regards to his communication skills, his interpersonal skill. I'm not talking about he's not a good communicator. I mean, he doesn't necessarily, this is a lot of conjecture here based on things that we've heard where he had issues at various stops, just dealing with players and that being more the issue, or dealing with a front office. But in terms of football acumen, Bill O'Brien's as good as they come. Exceptional coach. So Bill O'Brien has Boston College playing good football. Michigan State, another excellent coaching hire. Jonathan Smith from Oregon State. Look at Michigan State. They beat Maryland. That was their big test of the year. They slopped through a game against FAU, but they're 3-0. Baylor and Colorado. That, again, I think we're looking at an ugly game, but an entertaining game. Anytime Colorado steps on the field, and I'm not talking about the Dion impact, because that means nothing to me. He's just standing on the sideline like any other coach, but people are drawn to that. But for me, it's about that anywhere Colorado goes, they are taking to the field with three of the best players in the country. Now, one of them's out, Shiloh Sanders, unfortunately. He's out. But with the other two guys, Shadur Sanders and Travis Hunter, they're worth watching. Jimmy Horn's an excellent wide receiver. Dallin Hayden is an excellent running back. But no line play, no depth. So Colorado's a bad team. Purdue and Oregon State get together. So that's a Big Ten versus Pac-12/independent. Both of those teams coming off drubbings, especially Purdue. And then Kansas State and BYU late night on ESPN. So Kansas State's a better football team, no question. However, going to BYU late at night on a Saturday night, never easy. So don't be surprised if that is closer than expected. I got to think that has been baked into the point spread, that Kansas State's probably a touchdown favorite. Bingo, 7. It's like I look at these lines once in a while, actually. It's like I've actually seen a few things. Oregon State, 4.5. All right. Over Purdue. We are going to take a call for about 30 seconds. Michael, what's going on today?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. I didn't know you was taking calls today.
We are taking calls. Why would you call and not think we're taking calls? I'm not understanding your rationale there.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm just stating that we're off to our Oklahoma show here in like 2 minutes. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll make it quick.
Go ahead.
Key for either Illinois or Nebraska to win tonight.
Well, Nebraska is the worst turnover ratio in all of college football, post and pre Matt Rule. So Matt Rule did not correct that last year. They were just Scott Frost 2.0 from that standpoint. I'm not saying Matt Rule is not a significant upgrade from Scott Frost. He is. But are they going to be able to play a Big Ten opponent? And this would be the first decent opponent that they've played in years in which they have to control the turnover ratio. And they could be -1 and win the game. They could even be -2, but they can't be significantly behind in the turnover margin and win the game. So for Nebraska, it's simply take care of the football, and they should win the game. They're better than Illinois. For Illinois, they beat Kansas on a pick 6. They're going to need something similar. So this is weighted considerably in Nebraska's favor, like 65-35. So it's more about Illinois needs to play above its pay grade and to pull this game out.
Mm-hmm. I was wondering, and I think the only reason why Oregon State's favor is because they're playing in Corvallis. Or do you think they're a little bit better than Purdue?
Well, Vegas is telling us that they're just slightly, very slightly better than Purdue.
Mm-hmm. All right. I got to ask you this because I can't remember stuff. Oh, does Tennessee steamroll Oklahoma tomorrow?
You mean Tennessee?
Yeah.
Tennessee.
I meant to say, yeah, that's what.
My inclination is to say no. No.
Okay.
I think that's the general thought by people out there, but I say no.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Not bad. All right. See you tonight for your post-game show or tomorrow morning?
You'll see me tonight.
All right. Sounds good, sir.
Thanks,
Take
Michael.
care. See you.
We are talking Oklahoma football on Sooners Live right now. See you on the OU channel. Thanks for being here.